And we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessper Maquindang. If you're here to build a stronger team and a more effective company culture, you're in the right place. In each episode, our guests share tips, ideas, and strategies to help you and your people thrive. And I'm honored to introduce our next guest. Greg Bennick is a lifelong speaker and performer, delivering presentations in 27 countries, including a groundbreaking 21 event tour across Ukraine and Russia, a TEDxPerth speaking coach and TEDx speaker who was on the same stage following Simon Sinek the day Simon gave his start with Y Talk. Greg is also the author of Reclaim the Moment: 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. When he is not on stage, Greg is an expert in rare coins, a singer in 2 punk rock bands, and founder of 100 For Haiti, a nonprofit in Haiti creating sustainable impact through housing, education, clean water, and much more. Let's welcome Greg Bennick. Greg, how are you?
Jessper, thanks so much. That's a great introduction. Sounds like something I wrote. Don't tell me if I did, but I'm very impressed with myself based on how you just described me. It's really great to be here, and I'm happy to share some ideas with your listeners and viewers.
Greg, I am excited to have you on. And speaking of today's topic, I'm really looking forward to it. And that's the ideas of team and finding meaning, making them feel valued, that making sure they matter. And I was looking at the research and I just wanted to get your perspectives on this. And first piece of info I found was from Gallup. And they discovered that only 1 in 3 US workers receive praise. And those who don't feel recognized are twice as likely to plan quitting within a year. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, wouldn't you? Meaning I would. If somebody wasn't praising me for giving up the most valuable resource I have in this life, which is my time, agreeing to trade that time for money, and agreeing to trade that time for money under somebody else's context, rules, regulations, for their benefit and for the benefit of a greater company. If somebody didn't praise me, if somebody didn't remind me that I matter, if somebody didn't make me feel meaningful as a result of that transaction, trading time for money in this one and only life that I have, I'd quit. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I'm surprised the statistic isn't stronger. I think that when we remind people that they matter, and when people feel meaningful and that they're valuable contributors to something that has real value, that's a way to keep people around. It's a way to increase retention. It's a way to increase efficiency, productivity, all those things, which are byproducts of a strong team made up of people who really feel as though they're contributing something that matters.
Excellent point. And speaking of meaningful recognition, I found something from Nectar HR, and they discovered that meaningful recognition correlates with 87% of employees reporting improved job satisfaction. Want to get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Falls in line, right, with what I said earlier, is that, our job satisfaction is essentially life satisfaction. People often differentiate between their work life and their personal life, and that does make sense. But our work life has to be something that gives us value and meaning. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we're aiming for. Sure, there are people who work jobs that they don't like. But, when people are most effective is when they're working a job they do like, that they feel connected to. And I would hope that human resources people, the folks who did that study and found those statistics that you just said, found and would enhance that. When people feel as though they're valuable contributors to something, when they feel as though they're part of something meaningful, when they're enjoying what they're doing, when they're satisfied, deeply satisfied with their work, that's the way that you get increased efficiency. That's the way that you get heightened work culture. That's the way when you get, that's the way you get people retained and sticking with their jobs, because they no longer think of it as a job. They think of it as an extension of their life. They think of it as something that they do that gives them a sense of meaning in this one and only life that we get. So that's my thoughts. That's my reaction. I'm sticking to it.
Excellent point. And one more, and something from Quantum Workplace, and they discovered that employees who believe they'll be recognized are almost 3 times more likely to be highly engaged. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. Like if I just sat here the entire time and stared at you and didn't answer your questions, or if at the end of our half an hour together, instead of saying, Jessper, this is a really great interview, and I love what you do here. I love the fact that you tie workplace culture, which is your, reason to be, into this great StreamYard podcast series. You're the man. If instead of saying that, I was like, you know what? Jessper, did we just talk? I have no recollection of it. I was thinking about tacos the entire time. In fact, I'm gonna go get some tacos right now. And I just shut my laptop and I didn't acknowledge you. You would feel not only a diminished sense of purpose, not only a diminished sense of self, you'd probably be insulted, and rightly so. And you might not want to do another podcast episode. Multiply that times 365 days a year, which is what a worker is doing when they, that's the time commitment they put in. They put their life into a job, essentially. If you don't make people feel as though they're important, that their contributions are meaningful, I wouldn't be surprised that they don't want to engage, that they don't want to try harder, that they don't want to do more, that they don't want to contribute. I mean, the things that we're talking about, praise and uplifting people, are essential human qualities that people need in order to be functional in the world. So ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. We can't be thinking about tacos during our interviews. We have to be engaged and remind people that they matter. You're a great interviewer. I'm excited for all the questions yet to come.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. And on that note, let's take a deeper dive into the topic, meaningful teams, meaningful results. Greg, let's learn more about your story and your journey. What gave you the passion to jump into the work you do?
Absolutely. Well, the book behind me, Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now, came out last year. And it's got 7 strategies or ideas about ways that we can bring ourselves back to center in this moment when we've been thrown off track by the world. And one way that we often get thrown off track by the world is forgetting that we are meaningful, forgetting that the people around us are important and meaningful, and forgetting that our teams are more effective when we feel engaged and a part of those teams. Like when we're a part of a team that really has some value to us, that we feel as though we're a valuable contributor to, all of a sudden the game changes. So my history, I started out as a performer, as an entertainer, learning about the importance of connection with other individuals and with audiences through comedy juggling, through magic, through engaging performances that had me entertaining people literally from the time I was 13 years old. I did my first corporate events when I was 15 years old. It's been an amazing ride all over the world doing events and connecting with people. But it got me thinking about what happens when you actually listen to other people, when you actually care about them and actually give them the time of day. And in the course of my travels, I came upon the work of a couple people that I think were really meaningful to me. One was an Austrian psychoanalyst named Otto Rank. He was writing in the early 1900s. And the other was a man named Ernest Becker, who was a cultural anthropologist inspired by Rank, incidentally. And they both talked about, in their own way, how important it is to find meaning. Rank talked about it in terms of the artistic aesthetic, meaning where do we find meaning in the art that's around us? And Becker took it, I would say, even a step further. And Becker suggested, where do we find meaning in the people around us, in the things we do, in the things we're engaged in the world around us? And ultimately, we are meaning-hungry creatures. Finding meaning and feeling meaningful isn't just something that we like pizza. It's what we do as human beings. I mean, people talk about what's the meaning of life, as if there's an answer. Well, there is. The meaning of life is to live a life that's meaningful. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if we live a life that's meaningful, that's recognized by other people and felt deeply by ourselves, we are going to get through this life in an effective, uplifting, inspired, inspirational way, and it's going to impact others. And the others is where the team comes in. At the end of the day, what Becker was talking about, and my inspiration from him, was about instilling meaning in other people. That's what I want to do. If you and I are the only ones on this call, and no one else ever listens to this, and no one watches the recording, but I feel as though I was a valuable contributor to it, and that you're doing a good thing by having me answer these questions, I think we're in great shape. Even that kernel is the start of that origin point, is the start of effective teamwork. You and I working together. Imagine what happens when we take that to our teams that we work with every day. That sense of reminding people that they matter, being part of something meaningful, uplifting others, connecting with them, remembering how important that is. So reading extensively over the years and becoming, I'd say, an expert on Becker's work, and as much as one can be on Rank's work as well, has led me to where I am right now and inspired some good sections in my book as well, without a doubt.
Excellent. And you did bring up the point earlier in the beginning of the conversation, but speaking of meaning and purpose, why should people pay more attention to this?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is simple. If we don't pay attention to it, ultimately we do 2 things. We create the conditions for our own psychological demise, and we also create the conditions for the team around us to unravel. When we engage actively with other people, it's a means by which we uplift not only ourselves, but strengthen teams. And it's a way that we really dive into what's most meaningful in a way. Are we still live? Can you hear me?
I can hear you good.
Are you still there?
I can see you and hear you. I am.
Did you hear any of what I just said? Did you hear
Yes,
any
I
of
did.
what I just said?
Yes, I did.
Great. Okay. It cut out for a second on my end, so I'm not sure what quite's going on, but we'll work with it.
All right. And you did point it out. I was curious to know, Greg, what is the long-term impact on an organization when people feel like they don't matter?
Well, I mean, diminished morale, first and foremost. Let's make it simple, right? We could talk about psychoanalysts and philosophers all day long. People feel diminished morale, and diminished morale means lack of engagement. It means they're not going to contribute. It means that the workplace culture is going to feel more dreary, more heavy, more lifeless rather than more engaged. Remind people that they matter, and all of a sudden you see a turnaround in all of those effects. I see it happen every time I do a keynote or workshop series. I see people get engaged and get inspired because they're reminded that they matter. It's essential.
Excellent. And Greg, curious to know, what do we say to leaders who struggle to make their team feel seen or valued?
Listen, start listening, leaders. Dear leaders, start listening. Remember that a leader is only effective if you have people alongside of you. And I'm not going to say a leader is effective only if you have followers, because that creates an enhancement of a psychological, hierarchical dynamic, which I think is detrimental to leadership. I think when leaders lead by listening, when they connect with the people that they serve, not that they command, but that they serve, I think that that's a really effective leadership tool. Start with listening to people. Have regular meetings where you ask the people on your team, are you happy? Are you doing okay? Do you like working here? Do you like me? And if not, tell me why. And do it anonymously if need be. But let's have some feedback. Let's have a feedback system that allows us to communicate about the ideas that are most important to you, the person with whom I'm working, so that the person who I'm working with feels like they matter and that their contributions matter. I think it's an essential part of leadership that people talk about, but they don't really dive into enough. The element of listening allows people to feel heard. And when you feel heard, you feel as though you matter and that you're a meaningful contributor to the conversation and to the company overall.
That's an excellent point. And on that note, what are common mistakes that managers make when they're trying to motivate their teams?
Well, people motivate by a strong arm style, which is great if it's 1940. If you just got off your spaceship or your time machine, it's great if it's 1950 and you're leading with a strong arm. It's great if you want your company morale to be one of obedience. Cool. That's great. And it's also dated. It's time for a different mindset completely. It's time for managers to think of themselves as people who, yes, maintain order. Absolutely. We don't want anarchy in the workplace because ultimately the workplace has a point, right? We're aiming towards something. And if we're aiming towards something and everyone's going in a completely different direction, we're not going to be able to aim together. But I think that managers are guides. I think they're guides for a healthy group dynamic that starts with people being engaged and feeling as though they're contributing to that point, to that end. And that without my contribution to that end, that maybe we wouldn't get there. But even just the fact that I'm sharpening pencils here, that might just be the most meaningful part of everyone else's day, because then they get to write out their plans. Every point along the way, we need to be reminding the people around us that they matter and their contributions are meaningful. And that doesn't mean rewarding inefficiency. But what it does mean is uplifting people so that they can contribute in meaningful ways that are efficient. They can contribute in ways that are effective. There's ways to do that as a manager, which isn't strong-arming, but rather guiding and uplifting people along the way.
I like how you said guide and uplift. That is a very valuable quality. And on that note, Greg, I was curious to know, what advice do we give to people who feel like they are contributing? They know they're contributing, but no one is noticing the work they do. What advice do we give those people?
No, that's great, because at the end of the day, we cannot create a situation where we have to rely on the kind words of others in order to get by. Yes, it helps. Okay. And I said, we're meaning hungry creatures. That's very true. But what's also true is that we have to be, what's the Latin? Sui generis. We have to be self-generative. We have to, from within, draw from ourselves our own sense of meaning as well. So if I sit here and I say smart things for the next few minutes, and at the end of it, you go, Greg, thanks, click, and you hang up, I have to, from within, at least know that my contribution mattered because I believe it did. And even if you don't validate that, I still need to generate that myself. Okay, I need to be self-generative. And I think that if everyone remembers that, then it's not on leaders to provide that service of reminding people that they matter, making sure they feel meaningful. We need to do that as well, but we can build a culture around that. We can build a culture where it's a good idea for people to remember that they matter, to be okay with taking feedback, to be okay with contributing to something constructive, because sometimes people don't raise their voices or are unwilling to raise their voices out of fear. But if we take a different approach and create a culture where people are generating their own sense of self-worth, and where they feel as though they can contribute, and where they feel as though they're good relays for the ideas of others. I talk about it in my book. I call it the reverberation effect, where instead of just an idea rippling like ripples on a pond, and then it just ripples and fades to the end of the periphery of that pond, if we reverberate, share ideas, bounce ideas off one another, connect with one another in a powerful way, all of a sudden we are helping to generate and continue on that feeling that we're getting after. And that feeling ultimately is something very tangible. It's the morale that people talk about. You know, people are afraid to talk about touchy-feely ideas, right? But a feeling of being engaged and having a stronger morale, that counts as an effective feeling that people need to be paying attention to, regardless of what type of manager they think they are. So, yep, I think it's got to start from within and be enhanced by workplace culture.
Yes, indeed. And Greg, curious to know, let's say a team is working well, they're a well-oiled machine. Is it still important to recognize the work they do, even if things are going well?
Absolutely. You know, because the thing is, tell me this, I don't know if you've ever invested in anything, or I don't know if you've ever won or been winning anything. Maybe you've been the best high jumper in the world, or a really excellent sprinter, or really good at archery. Someone's going to come along and be better. And that's okay. But maybe it's not okay. Maybe you want to continue being the best. And if you want to continue being the best, or the well-oiled machine that you've described, it's important to make sure that the machine stays well-oiled. Well, one place where people get rusty and rusted out is from within. They get rusted out from within if they don't feel as though they matter. They get rusted out from within as if they feel as though their lives are just routine, every single day the same, running into the next. They feel ultimately like, what is the point of all this? Well, they might think that too if they're winning, if they're at the top of their game. Okay, I'll just phone it in. I'll come into work today and we're going to win. But keeping people inspired and saying, okay, let's see what the new level is that we can aspire to and achieve. Let's see what the new level of winning is. Let's see what the new level of being well-oiled is at the end of the day. You know, we can come together and decide that we can do more. I think it's really important.
Excellent point. And curious to know, what questions should leaders ask, maybe within themselves or with their team, to spark this deeper sense of meaning, whether it's reflective or conversational? What questions should leaders ask?
I think it's great. I think asking people if they're happy, that's a great place to start. I mean, are you happy? Are you enjoying yourself? I mean, Jessper, if we did this conversation every single day, we'd get to about day 2 or 3, and I would ask you, how is this going? Is this what you wanted? Is this what you want? Is this where we're headed? Is this what you want to see for your listeners? Is this what your listeners are giving you feedback that they want? Or am I just sitting here waxing philosophical and people are saying, yeah, get back to the taco recipes. That's what we're really signed in for. I'd say asking people if they're happy, asking people if they're satisfied, asking people if they're feeling meaningful. And if not, why not? Starting from there, I think, is really important. We got to build a culture of listening. We got to build a different type of engagement into our workplace culture so that people feel as though they're being heard. At the end of the day, let people feel heard, and they're going to go so much further than if they feel as though their voice doesn't matter. There is not a person walking this earth for whom life exists just day to day to day to day to day, and they don't want to matter. They don't want to feel as though their contribution to the world matters. I've seen this happen in the jungles of Haiti. I've seen it happen in Siberia. I've seen it happen in dozens of countries where I talk to people and ask them, what's the most important to you? Where do you find value and meaning? And they find value and meaning, sure, in our kids and in our home and in those sorts of things, but they want to feel as though they matter. They want to feel as though they're contributors to something that has substance to it. And the way to get there is to just ask people, do you feel that? And if you don't, what could help? And sometimes it could be something very simple. It doesn't have to be they need a new office space and to be declared supreme potentate of the company. It could be something very simple. I'd really love it if somebody would ask me every once in a while how I'm doing, or if anyone would ask me every once in a while if I need help, or if maybe just remind me that I did a good job on something, or tell me that I didn't, and here's how I can do better, because even then they are seen. And when we are seen, we feel acknowledged. When we feel acknowledged, that is the beginning of the path to finding meaning and to feeling meaningful.
Those are great actions that leaders can take. And next thing I'd like to know is, you did point out to it earlier, but let's talk about the ripple effect. What is the impact of people outside of work when they do feel that when they feel like they do matter at work?
Yeah.
How does that extend outside?
No, for sure. And I differentiate between ripple and reverberation in my book. Not that a ripple effect doesn't have meaning. I mean, the reason that it's a standardized way of looking at action and response, the reason that that's true is because it makes sense. Throw a stone in the pond, the ripples go out to the edge. Got it. Okay, I see what happens. Action, response, cool. But I think that with reverberation, my point is that we can be relays for that initial action. We can then enhance that initial action, describe it in a new way, and then reverberate from there. So I think that it's important for us to recognize that when we're in work or when we're out of work, that if we're really listening to the people around us and helping to enhance them and reverberate, right? Enhance their ideas, not just communicate our own, that's a way to build healthy teams, not just at work, but at home, in our relationships, in our love lives, in our friendship lives, in our communities. I mean, my book ultimately is not just a book about work. It's a book about developing healthy teams, and it's a book about developing healthy communities and healthy connections. And that's true whether we're wearing a suit or whether we're wearing shorts and a t-shirt on a Saturday afternoon. I think that there's a lot of strength to be found in building healthy connections, and a lot of value for each of us to be found in the same.
Excellent. And what are some actions that leaders can take to really reinforce that their people matter?
Yeah, I would say throw big parties every day. At the end of the day, have a big party called You Matter. No, you know what? Have a party, have some fun, do something different. That's a good way to start. But also, you could simply acknowledge people, smile at them, see them, look at them. Remember that when I talked earlier about people finding meaning, it's about people feeling as though they exist and being seen as though they exist, right? When we don't feel as though we exist, or that anyone has acknowledged our being, that's a path to destruction. Psychologically, spiritually, a path to our destruction. And for those who are listening, for whom psychological and spiritual concerns don't tie into financial and economic concerns, think again. Because when people are psychologically and or spiritually engaged, when they are reminded, hey, it's good to see you. Hey, thanks so much for submitting that report on time. Hey, I know that this week might have just seemed like it was a dry week where we were all just chugging along, hitting that deadline, but you did it. Recognizing people, the psychological and spiritual ties directly into the financial and the economical and the efficient. All of those elements that we equate with running an effective business are rooted in people. Unless your business is entirely AI, completely disconnected. And then you know what? Even then, the people running the machine behind the computer need the same recognition. When we connect strongly, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally to the work that we're doing, ultimately we are valuable contributors to something which has ramifications that are financial, economical, and so on.
Absolutely. That goes back to meaning and making people feel they matter. And Greg,
Essential.
I was curious about your early journey. You mentioned growing up, you landed in magic and comedy. Could you tell us more about the life lessons you've learned from those experiences?
Absolutely. So the lessons that I learned from being on stage from a very young age were always about connection. Because if I walk out on stage and I phone it in and I do a presentation, a performance, a keynote, whatever it might be, whether with juggling, with magic, without, if I phone it in, the audience knows and they're not going to respond. If I bring myself to the moment every single time, the lesson there is the connection is going to heighten the experience. I have a note on my door in my loft in Seattle that says the preparation only prepares us as far as hello. And what that means is it's a reminder to the audience. From that point, that hello point to the audience, that's where everything really begins. And that's where engagement and connection has to really start. And as I mentioned earlier, it starts with listening. But from a very early age, I realized that when you connect with people off the bat and you really, really, really are present in that moment, that's what's going to enhance their interpretation of your performance, presentation, work, communication, what have you. But all along the way, that's what I learned about, that's what I learned from my presentations that were comedic in nature, but ultimately were really about all the things we're talking about here.
Excellent. And Greg, I know you're the founder of a nonprofit in Haiti.
Yeah.
Curious to learn more about that. Could you tell us more?
Sure. I started 100 for Haiti after the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. I was on the first private relief boat after the major earthquake, which was arguably one of the most tragic events in this hemisphere's history. I mean, we can think of certainly some others, but this was an amazing, truly awe-inspiring event. And I say awe-inspiring not in the way that you're watching the Super Bowl from the 50-yard line awe-inspiring, but awe-inspiring meaning truly terrible event. But in the aftermath of that, I was on the first private relief boat with my friends to bring food and supplies to the southern coast of Haiti. And once there, I realized a need in people there for support. Not that the Haitian people couldn't make it on their own, but this was a moment where they needed support and were asking for support. So I'd been in Haiti before the earthquake. I made a documentary called The Philosopher Kings there in 2009. So in 2010, when I was back on the boat, I stayed after I got off that sailboat, bringing relief supplies. And I decided to start 100 for Haiti. And basically, it started as a relief organization, shipping food, rice, supplies, and whatnot, and then quickly switched to a development organization because relief has an inherent tendency to lead to dependency, and dependency does not mean empowerment. However, development does. Development leads to empowerment. So we started listening to the Haitian people about what projects they wanted to develop and what they wanted to do. And it took some time. Across borders and across languages and across culture, but we landed on feeding hungry people, providing clean water, sending kids to school from the equivalent of age kindergarten through high school, providing internet in schools, helping farmers plant crops, putting roofs on houses. Those are the things that 100 for Haiti does in Haiti. So, and continues to this day. And if people are interested in finding out more, they can check out 100forhaiti.org. It's all spelled out, ONEHUNDREDFORHAITI.org.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing, Greg. And one more thing I'd like to know is, as we reflect on the future with meaningful teams and meaningful results, could you tell us your thoughts in maybe a decade from now? What is the importance of belonging and meaning and making people feel they matter? Where do you see that going in the future?
Well, let me look it up on ChatGPT for you. Let me look up on AI and check out my answer, because it doesn't really matter that you asked, did it? If ChatGPT can ask the question and if ChatGPT can provide my answer, you see where this is going already? 10 years from now, human connections are going to matter more than ever. I hope that humans are around 10 years from now to matter more than ever. But in a world of automation, in a world of efficiency, in a world of computing, in a world of artificial intelligence, human connections and having people feel connected is going to matter more than ever before. That's my crystal ball looking forward to 10 years from now. Start now and prepare yourself now to develop and enhance and uplift your people, because they're going to need it now. They're going to need it later more than ever. And certainly that's going to transform as AI becomes more integrated in every single task and every single element of our lives.
Excellent perspective. And Greg, as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to reach you should they want to learn more about you and the work you do?
Well, you can go to gregbennick.com. Watch my promo video. It's pretty fun. Greg Bennick, GregBennick.com. You can also email me anytime. I'd love to hear from anybody who is listening to this interview. Email me at impact, IMPACT, at gregbennick.com. But also, of course, I'm on LinkedIn as everybody else is, and on Instagram at Greg Bennick. And you mentioned being a rare coin expert earlier. Check out at Mint Errors, MINTERRORS. That's my rare coin Instagram account. There's some pretty fascinating things there that you don't have to be in coins and interested in coins to be fascinated by. So that's the ways people can reach me, and I'd love to hear from anybody who's listening.
Very interesting. And Greg, before we go, what is your final piece of wisdom for our audience?
My final piece of wisdom, take care of yourselves. This is a world which, by and large, isn't always going to take care of you. So be sure to take care of yourself. And I mean that sincerely. Like, exercise, go for a walk, drink some more water, take care of yourself, and don't get swept up in what the world is demanding and asking of you. Because if you do that only and exclusively, you're going to end up years and years and years from now turning around and asking, what happened? Because you forgot to take care of yourself along the way. So take care of yourselves. And in fact, go a step further. Let me know, write to me. Let me know how you did it, because I'd love to hear.
Excellent piece of wisdom, Greg. And for everyone out there, thank you again for tuning in. We hope you picked up some great insights and takeaways. And if you know any leaders who could benefit from this conversation, please feel free to share this with them. And last but not least, Greg, thank you again for such a great conversation. Such wonderful insights to learn more about making people feel valued, bringing that sense of belonging, bringing that sense of meaning. It does have an impact on other people. And like you said, it does reverberate and really does provide positive change in the lives of other people. So Greg, thank you again. Really appreciated this conversation. And to everyone out there, thank you again for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jessper.
Great conversation.